Morning, everyone. Before we get started, I just want to see if there's anything we need to talk about before we go on the record. Is everyone who is expecting to attend today present?
The only, issue on the record or off the record is to find out if you are going to issue a ruling on the objections so that we know what is going to be presented today.
Yeah. Okay, Kim, are you ready to go on the record?
I am.
All right, let us begin. Good morning, everyone. This is an evidentiary hearing in Vermont Public Utility Commission case number 23-4036-NMP. It concerns a petition filed by Duxbury 100 Solar LLC for a certificate of public good pursuant to 30 VSA sections 248 and 1010, authorizing the installation and operation of a 500 kilowatt group net metering system in Duxbury, Vermont. My name is Jake Marron. I've been appointed as hearing officer in this matter. I'm going to start by taking appearances for folks who are new to the hearing process. Appearances just means each party's representative is going to introduce themselves so that the court reporter can record that. So I'm going to start with the petitioner and then ask the department to identify themselves next. And then the intervening parties can follow up. So start with you, Attorney Cadwell.
Thank you. Leslie Cadwell, legal counselors and advocates for Duxbury 100 Solar LLC.
Michael Swain for the Department of Public Service.
All right, Ms. Joyle, would you like to go next? And did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes, Joyle, yes. I'm Linda Joyle. I'm representing my parents, Burton and Rebecca Green. They are butters to the property. This is my mom, Becky.
Good morning. Thank you, Ms. Joyle. All right, and Mr. and Mrs. Grace.
We are Robert and Kathy Grace, and we are abutters to the property that has been in my family for over 70 plus years.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we get started with the evidentiary hearing, there are a couple housekeeping items that I'd like to take care of. First, Attorney Cadwell, a week or so ago, you filed a motion requesting that Ms. Joyle identify witnesses who will be presenting today. There was a response filed. I just want to make sure that that issue has been resolved satisfactorily. Is there anything else that needs to be determined with respect to who is testifying today?
No, I'll address this through cross, trying to figure out what's based on her own personal knowledge and what is hearsay.
Okay. And then there was an objection filed regarding the potential cross examination of Mr. and Mrs. Grace today. I'll ask first, does Ms. Joyle, do you have any response to the objection? Do you understand the objection that Attorney Cadwell has lodged against you asking questions of the Graces?
I do understand what she has presented as an objection. However, there are so few interviewers in this process, and I don't have any control over that. The Graces are related to me. They're the other abutting landowners.
Okay, so my ruling is this, is that there was a deadline of May 24th for parties to present direct testimony. And Mr. and Mrs. Grace could have filed testimony, as you did, Ms. Joyelle, laying out their position or any facts that they wanted to get into the record today. However, they didn't do that, and allowing you to ask them questions would be basically taking, direct testimony at this point of the proceeding, and that is out of order for the commission schedule. So I'm not going to allow it. Mr. and Mrs. Grace, that doesn't mean you can't participate today. You're certainly welcome to listen and object to any evidence that's being, presented or things like that. And you'll also have an opportunity to file briefs and comments after this hearing. But I won't be allowing you folks to take the stand and give testimony today or answer questions.
Mr. Marron, I
Yes,
probably should have said this at the beginning, but the reason that we didn't file any testimony is our son has been in the hospital, I'll try not to cry, for 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
We've been taking care of his kids, and a lot of the stuff that we would have objected to, we didn't get until last night from Ms. Caldwell, and I'm not quite sure why everything was left until way in the evening to be posted. So that is something that concerns us.
Understood. And to the extent you have an objection, the admission of any of the cross exhibits that were offered late yesterday or today, you're going to be able to do that. You also have an opportunity to file more written comments addressing all of the information that's been presented in this case and saying why you want this project to be approved or not be approved, or subject to whatever conditions you think are appropriate. But what I am ruling today is that the opportunity to present sort of new facts was back in May, and that opportunity is passed. So that's what I'm disallowing today. And I'm very sorry to hear about your son.
Thank you.
Next up on issues, in your response to my pre-hearing memorandum, Attorney Cadwell, you mentioned that I was going to address the representation of the Greens by Linda Joyelle again. Unless there is an objection pending related to that matter, I'm going to allow it. I don't have any issues with it. So that's the resolution of that topic, unless you have any other issues you'd like to raise at that point.
No, I really just wanted the record to be clear that there was an affirmative decision to allow somebody who's not an attorney to represent somebody else, because that does, as I noted in the submission, an affirmative decision by the commission is required. There's no permission to do it as a right. So that was all.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. With those little matters out of the way, the schedule of witnesses who will be going through cross-examination today is we're going to start with the petitioner's witness, Ms. Daskis, and then we will move on to Ms. Joyelle. So I will ask Ms. Cadwell, Attorney Cadwell, to call her witness and introduce her. I will swear her in, then we can get the introductions out of the way, and then Ms. Joyelle, you'll be able to ask questions. So,
Mr. Marron, I'm not sure what the resolution on the written objections that we filed way back when on the testimony from the Greens. I filed written objections to the admission of certain portions of Ms. Joyelle's testimony, as well as several of the exhibits. And that's what I meant by I'd like to know, like, what's coming in and what's not. So that was my question. And if you're going to defer that ruling till after the hearing, I just need to know one way or the other.
you'll have to forgive me, Ms. Cadwell. Bear with me one second. I have notes.
Leslie, I see you speaking, but you're muted.
Yeah, sorry about that. I filed it. The objections were filed in accordance with the rule, I provided actually a red line to assist the hearing officer and the parties to understand what it was that we were objecting to. They're mostly, the objections are that they're out of the scope of the issues for the hearing. And again, if this is something that hasn't been resolved in advance of the hearing, we'll just do what we can to address the issues, and you can issue a ruling in your P4D, I guess.
Yeah. I think that is correct. My plan was for you should conduct your cross-examination as if everything's admitted just for the time being, and then when we get to the P4D, I'll rule on the issues to the extent they're necessary. I think it may be more efficient to wait to see whether you're adversely affected by any of this. So I would ask questions if you feel like you need to, but with the recollection that the there was a previous hearing officer who had this case before it was assigned to me. I mean, the scope of this hearing is limited to aesthetics. So to the extent folks are trying to ask questions about issues that are other than aesthetics, that's going to be outside the scope of today's hearing. That ruling has already been made. So.
Thank you. So Martha Staskis, you can turn your camera on.
Okay, I have never done this before. I'm going to do my best.
Joy, we just have a few pieces of legal
Okay,
theater
sorry.
to go through here. Just this is our Perry Mason moment where we get to actually imagine that we're in a courtroom and put Miss Staskis on the stand, so to speak. So Miss Cavell has called Miss Staskis, so I'm just going to ask Miss Staskis to raise her right hand, please. Ms. Staskis, do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury to tell the truth in this proceeding?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. All right. Ms. Cavell, do you want to ask a few questions just to introduce Ms. Staskis for the record?
Okay, I thought we were stipulating to the admission of her testimony, but
right.
I guess I could.
You know what? I apologize. I have all these handwritten notes here of things to do, and I'm getting ahead of myself because this is exciting for me. The parties filed a document with a stipulated list of exhibits. Those were the exhibits that there were no objections to. I have marked that document as Commission 1, and it lists all the documents and exhibits that were filed in this proceeding, except for the Green's exhibits numbered 3 and 5. Is that correct?
And Linda's, Ms. Joyle's testimony, because it contained pieces that were, we objected to. So,
okay, so without ruling on the admissibility of those 3 issues, I'm going to admit this document and all of the documents indicated on it as a part of the evidentiary record. And then, Ms. Staskis, you are the same Ms. Staskis who prepared testimony exhibits that were listed on this document?
Yes, I am.
Yes, you are. Okay, so now we're ready for Ms. Joyle to ask cross-examination. And so Ms. Joyle, you may ask your questions now, take your time, and if you need it, take a break or look at any documents, please, take as much time as you need.
Okay. I would like to put exhibits up that for you to reference to, but I Googled it and I don't know how to do it.
I can
So,
help with that. Which exhibit would you like me to put on the screen?
okay. So the first exhibit is D1S MS1 Martha's resume.
Okay.
Okay.
Just give me 1 second.
Yep.
Okay, is this the document you were hoping to see?
Yes. Okay.
All right, and is there I can zoom out so we can see the whole thing, but it might be hard to read. Is there any particular part you would like me to move the screen to?
If you could scroll it down a little bit so it shows her education. Yep, that's good. Okay. So I have 3 questions relating to her resume. The first question is, Martha, do you have a degree in landscape design?
No, I do not.
And the next question is, do you have a degree in horticulture?
No, I do not.
And the third question is, are you or have you ever been an arborist?
No, I am not.
Okay, thank you. All right, now the next question I have is on Exhibit D1S, MS2. It's the site plan. Okay, the section that I am going to ask questions about is in the bottom left corner. It's red. It's a red area that's boxed out, and it says in the little caption that trees, let me get the exact wording. Sorry. Trees with canopies taller than 15 feet will be removed in the area outlined in the red to prevent shading of the array, I think is what it says. So my question is it the intention of Duxbury Solar to cut and remove all trees with a canopy taller than 15 feet in the red boxed area?
No, it is not. The intention, as stated, and Leslie, you're gonna have to find the document where it was corrected, but the intention is and was filed as the correction that the trees would be topped. They'll not be removed.
Chopped at 50, so the height of 15 feet.
Correct.
Okay. So these trees are all old growth trees. Would you agree to that? That they have been there for several years?
Well, you need to define what old growth means. That's a specific term.
So in my reference to old growth means they are well-established trees that have been there for several years, more than 50.
More than 50.
So,
Is there a question? I didn't catch the question.
sorry. So my question is, if those old trees are cut to only 15 feet tall, will they potentially survive?
Yes, potentially. We're cutting the top of the tree, not the root system.
Okay. So, all right, so could we look at exhibit BRG cross pictures 2, 3, and 5?
Bear with me just a moment. It's going to take me a second to pull this up, okay?
No, that's fine.
I believe the cross exhibit was labeled interveners, cross 1.
Yes, I'm sorry. You're right. And then it has 5 pages.
Okay.
Is this the correct
If we
document?
could- Yep, if we could scroll down just a little bit more, or up, I'm not, yep, a little bit more, okay. So in this picture, this is a picture of the tree line, and my mother, Rebecca, is there, and we measured from her foot, a line to the top of that balloon to represent about 15 feet. So my question is, you would be topping the trees at that height?
I'm going to object. There's a foundational question here. Ms. Joyle's making a representation, but it's not clear that the witness knows what could verify or affirm what this picture represents, or whether that the height of what she's claiming is 15 feet is 15 feet.
Do you think we could maybe ask Ms. Daskis a few questions to try to see if do you mind if I ask Ms. Daskis a few questions to see if we can get a little bit of foundation here so that we can try to use this document?
Not at all.
Well, let me just say that I actually object to the hearing officer providing one party with assistance. The Public Utility Commission provides a lot of materials to help parties like Ms. Joyle or the Greens and pro se representatives, including a document on how to address evidence in evidentiary hearings. And while I don't want to make things more difficult, I do want the proceeding to be fair to Duxbury, and having the hearing officer act as an advocate to provide foundation for a party's evidence just doesn't seem quite appropriate.
I'm trying to help some interveners, navigate a pretty difficult legal process, Ms. Cadwell, and so I'm going to overrule your objection, and I'm just going to try to see if we can get a little bit of help here for these folks. Ms. Daskis, do you recognize where this photo was taken?
No,
No, you don't? Okay, so
there's no reference. There's no reference around it.
there's no reference around it. It doesn't look like the tree line between the project site that you've been developing for the last 2 years and the Greens house?
No, I've not been on the Greens property. I know the other side, I know the Duxbury side pretty well, fairly well, but this looks like a mowed lawn, which is not what the Duxbury property is.
Mr. Oil, I've tried to give a little bit of aid, but there's only so far I can go here. And
No,
so,
that's fine.
Can you try to ask a different question maybe at this point? We'll see if we can move on.
Right. I certainly can ask another question. Are any of the trees proposed to be cut on this tree line on the Greens property?
No trees, so good question. The boundary survey has not been completed and no trees would be cut on the Greens property. We don't have rights to do that.
Okay. So, another question that I have is, are any of the trees proposed to be topped on the property line?
The trees that would be topped would be on the Duxbury town property.
They would only be on the Duxbury town property, not on the property line.
Right, we can cut branches up vertically, but they have to be on the Duxbury town property.
Okay. All right. Do you have a simulation of what the property line will look like when the trees with a canopy of taller than 15 feet have been topped?
No, I don't.
Is that something you could provide?
I don't know for what purpose.
Okay.
Or, I mean, I'm not really even sure what it is you're asking me.
I'm asking you if a simulation could be made showing what the property line, what the trees along, excuse me, the property line that you intend to top at 15 feet, what that line would look like after that's done.
Well, the boundary line survey has not been completed, so I guess the answer is no.
Okay. All right. All right, then we'll move on. If we could look at exhibit VRG cross, that's this same one, sorry, on page 4. So if we could scroll down or up, whichever way that goes.
I'm sorry, which page again?
Page 4.
Page 4, I apologize.
Is this one? Oh, there we go. That's 3, 4. Okay. Along the property line, oops, go back. There. Along the property line, there are several of these orange ribbons. What do those ribbons represent?
I'm gonna object again, Ms. Joyle is testifying and then asking Ms. Daskis to testify in response. If she's asking whether Ms. Daskis can recognize what this image is and whether she's seen flags along a property line, that might be more appropriate to establish at least a foundation. What Ms. Daskis said was that a boundary survey has not been done, so I don't know that she knows what those flags are.
You're starting to testify on her behalf also, so how about we just rephrase the question? It sounds like, Ms. Joyle, you're asking, does Ms. Daskis know what that orange flag is? Is that
Yes.
the question?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think I have to clarify. So we've requested from Horizon Engineering to do a survey. I have not seen the results of that. They may have been out in the field, and I actually tried to reach them this morning to find out, and they did not respond. So if this is a photograph that's on the property line, it could be, and I can try to find out, or I made the request to, it could be a surveyor's flag. It also, there is a wetland on the property line, so I don't know where this is on the property line, assuming it's on the southern property line between the Doyles, or excuse me, between the Greens and the town's property. It could be a wetland flag. I just don't know where this is.
This is on the property line between the Greens and the town of Duxbury's property.
And I don't know who placed it there.
Okay. So again, if we could go back, actually go down one more or two, another, please. All right, right there. This is a picture taken from the property line on the southern border between the Greens and Duxbury, Duxbury's land. The pine trees in the back of the picture are conifer trees that were planted as part of the Act 250 hearing reclamation request. My question to you is, are the conifer trees in the background, will they ensure retention of the aesthetics for the greens and provide significant screening?
I'm only going to object, to, the foundation. So I don't have any objection for Ms. Joyle asking Ms. Daskis, if assuming that it's true that these are trees, that are along the border or, where she characterized, if she would agree with, the statement that they would provide screening or something like that. I'm not going to, my objection in terms of the admissibility of the photographs, remains. Ms. Joyle had the opportunity to file this information with her pre-filed testimony, in order to establish, the veracity of what she's claiming now, and didn't do that. So, Ms. Joyle, if you could rephrase the question, perhaps to say, assuming that this photograph represents what you're saying it represents, and then ask Ms. Daskis the question, I suppose would be maybe the way to get at it.
Okay, I was just trying to clarify where the picture was taken because it was identified earlier that there was no proof that that's where the picture was taken. So assuming that this picture is on the southern property line, taken from the southern property line between the Greens and the town of Duxbury, the trees in the back, the pine trees, are the conifers that were planted. Would you say that they provide significant screening and ensure the retention of the aesthetics?
So the trees that are planted as part of the town's reclamation plan for the gravel pit will be retained, and in fact, we offered to replace the dead trees, the dead conifers that are at the site now along the berm, and I do believe they will provide the screening necessary for the project.
Okay. If we could look at exhibit BRG 5, which I believe is in our, that was in our, provided as part of our response to the application that, I'm not describing it right, I'm sorry. Okay, let's move this.
There's somebody that's not muted.
There's somebody that's not needed?
Sorry, I'm just noticing that there's somebody joined that has a microphone on, and I thought the rules were you had to mute it if you're not talking. That's all.
So the exhibit, it's a picture within our initial exhibit, and I believe it was one of the ones that you did not object to, Leslie. It's picture 1 of the Greens living room and picture 2 of the Greens kitchen, from the Greens kitchen.
I think this document that you're referring to is what was labeled as Exhibit BRG-5, and it is one of the
Yes.
documents that was objected to. It's not on the stipulated
Oh.
list. So right now we're proceeding that we haven't determined whether that will be admitted or not. So if you have any questions about it, you can ask them, but it's all subject to that, my final ruling may, allow or disallow these documents depending on the arguments that are raised.
May I I did not object to those photographs. Ms. Joyle is correct.
Okay,
The only portion of that exhibit that I did not object to were those photographs.
okay, so those are not objected to. Okay, great. So
So,
would you like me to, I'll pull that up on the screen here and we can look
Thank
at
you.
it.
yep, thank you. Okay. So this is the first picture. And then I think if we roll down, we'll be able to see the second picture. Okay. So the first picture was taken from the window in the Greens living room, and the second picture was taken from the window in the Greens kitchen. So my question is, if the trees, let me see how I want to say this, sorry. When in the spring, fall, and winter, when there are no leaves on any of the vegetation, will this provide significant screening? Will the conifer trees?
The remaining portion of the trees that are on the Duxbury property, along with the conifer trees that are on the Duxbury property, will provide screening from the project. I don't know, my question on these photographs is what's the focal length? I don't know whether they're zoomed in or not. I don't know how far away they're taken from. So I just want to make that clear. I recognize this must be from their house. I'm assuming they are, but I don't know what the focal length is.
So, they're not zoomed in, and they were pictures taken from their house, which are approximately 93 feet from the corner of their house on that side to the property line.
Probably not. Thank you.
So would you say it's a fair statement that most of the trees are, what's the word I want, deciduous? Is that the right word? Trees that have leaves?
Yes.
Okay. So you feel that in those months when there are no leaves on the trees, there would be significant screening?
There's also the conifer trees that are behind. So from the Greens property, there are the deciduous trees, and then there are the conifer trees and the berm, and then the array.
Correct. So if we can roll this back up to the first picture, would you say that the screening is sufficient in this picture?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess we will jump to exhibit D1S, MS6. Mr. Marron, I don't know who KA is, but could they mute their microphone because it is providing a lot of feedback?
Thank you, Mrs. Grace. That's exactly what I was trying to get across earlier.
You see, they're in the bottom on my screen.
Mr. Marron is muted.
I'm muted. I apologize for that. The participant who is identified as KA, could you actually identify yourself? I don't believe they were on at the beginning of the hearing. maybe, or is that the, yeah, I just would like to make sure I know everyone who's observing today's proceedings. No response from KA? Would you at least mute your microphone if you're not going to identify yourself? I don't have the ability to mute them myself, so unfortunately I can't do that. Oh, they've left. Okay, well, that was not necessarily my intention to force them to leave, but if they have felt so uncomfortable identifying themselves, I guess that's that. All right, bringing back to Exhibit 6 is what you were looking for?
Yes,
All
we
right.
could look at page 4 of 15.
Page 4 of 15.
Yes.
Exhibit MS6 is the excerpts of the regional and town plans, which has many more pages than 15. So, which exhibit, I'm a little confused where I'm supposed to be directing us right now.
I think
No,
MS6
so,
aesthetic
so
assessment.
exhibit 6 is the aesthetics and orderly development report, and then there's an appendix.
I
That's a
was
separate
looking at the
appendix.
My bad. Thank you.
You're
Okay.
welcome. This Joyle knows her stuff.
Yep, okay, so page 4, all right. So, section B, the characterization of the project surroundings. It was determined that the project's view shed is limited due to this surrounding vegetation and rolling topography. The low profile of the array combined with the remaining on-site vegetation and topography profile will result in the project being substantially screened. My question to you, Martha, is if all trees are topped 15 feet, if all trees taller than 15 feet will be topped, what substantial screening within the view shed will remain?
So the topography, there's great feedback. The topography along Route 100 declines towards the north of the project area where the Crosset Brook School is and the Crosset Brook Array, and then the vegetation along there stays. The town has vegetation to the north, to the east, to the west, and then the topography breaks away, and it's Route 100 heads south towards Waitsfield, and the vegetation along there again remains.
So what about the vegetation along the property borderline between the greens and the town?
Right, so as you pointed out, the trees would be topped at 15 feet to the height of the array is proposed from the panels will be 3 feet off the ground to approximately 15 feet. There is a berm on the town's property that is from the Act 250 reclamation, and the conifer white pines are there. The remaining vegetation on the property will still be there. As part of the Queechy test, there is not the objective is not to hide the array. The objective, and it's recognized that the landscape may change. And I think that we've taken reasonable mitigation steps to enhance or replace the dead trees that are on the town's property, to actually meet with you and your family after the installation is in to see if there is more that needs to be done. But I think that the existing vegetation, the change in the topography along the public way is sufficient to meet the Queechy test. We've taken reasonable mitigating steps.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last sentence, Martha.
We've taken reasonable mitigating steps.
Thank you.
Okay, as long as we're on this document, I'm sorry, I'm gonna jump around a little bit so we can just stay on this document. If we could go to page 13. Okay, section 2, it states, the question was, has the applicant taken reasonable available mitigation steps to reduce the project's visual impacts? And the answer was yes. And then, you know, obviously everybody can read all of that. And at the very last sentence, it says, once installed, the parties will determine if additional deciduous shrubbery is needed to further enhance the existing screening. So my first question was, when looking at the existing tree line between the greens and the town property, how many of the existing trees are shorter than 15 feet tall?
I don't have a specific.
Okay. And, let's see. And then what type of deciduous shrubbery would enhance the screening?
What I've used on a number of other projects actually are lilacs. They're native, they grow a good 15 feet, they fill in on the bottom or the lower branches. So I would recommend, as we have installed at other projects, lilacs.
Would deciduous shrubbery provide screening in the winter or
Yes.
in their leaf off condition?
Yes.
Because the lilacs I have leaves and they lose them in the winter months.
Right, but they have stems and they're dense stems.
Okay. So that my next question, which you kind of already answered, was what is your plan to recreate screening? And that's to plant lilacs, yes?
Well, we agreed, what we have proposed, again, is to top the trees, the existing deciduous trees on the town's property at 15 feet, to maintain the existing conifer trees that are, the white pines that are planted on the berm, and to replace the dead conifers that are on the berm. And then lastly, we also propose to meet with you and your family following to see if additional screening was required or is needed.
Okay.
Will be needed.
All right. So, is there a line item in the project budget, excuse me, to add additional screening?
We will meet with you folks and make accommodations if there's additional screening needing. Yes, we can accommodate that.
Okay. So what, do you have a budget in mind as to how much this would cost for such screening?
Well, I don't believe that additional screening will be needed, but if you folks, you and your parents believe that there is additional screening, there could be a need, we can accommodate that. I will say, I don't know, am I allowed to comment on the proposal that was provided?
The arborist estimate?
Yeah, the arborist is not a landscape management company. I don't know who they are. I've never heard of them before. I will say that what they proposed were arborvitae, which is literally deer food, So I would be quite concerned if the proposal was to plant arborvitae there, which over the long term of the project would not survive, likely not survive.
Okay, noted. So you don't have a budget in mind that would be acceptable for adding additional screening?
I've said I would be able to accommodate it.
Can you be more specific about that?
We would have, it's not gonna be $45,000. I think that's excessive. And again, it proposes planting some quantity of arborvitae, which is not a species that would survive.
Would you say that arborvitaes and conifers are in the same range of cost?
It depends on the conifer. If it's a white cedar, you know, we could, we would, if we get to that point, we would propose something more along the lines of the white cedar. And they are comparable, if not more, quite frankly.
Okay. All right, sorry, I jumped around on my list a little bit, so just give me a minute. So I'd like to go back and talk about the conifer trees that exist there now, and ask you some questions. We did see some of them in the picture behind that I presented. Leslie presented a picture last night, except I don't have that exhibit number, but that was from the Duxbury side, if that would be better for you to refer to. But my questioning is, looking at the conifer trees, the one next to the dead tree planted 5 plus or minus years ago, has that provided sufficient screening?
Can we put the photograph up?
I'm sorry, can we put what back up?
I'm gonna pause for a second just because this is a little unusual. Usually, the cross exhibits are, introduced by the party, presenting them, and so
That's fine.
I guess I'll turn to Ms. Cadwell. Do you have any objection to showing this cross exhibit for the purposes of, your cross exhibit for the purposes of cross-examining Ms. Staskis?
I would be delighted to have those exhibits
You'd be delighted,
presented
yeah.
to Ms.
Okay,
Staskis.
up it will come. You just hold on 1 second.
Miss Joel, I could add to your comment about the vegetation, some other species that are not so deer friendly could be hemlock or not hemlock, excuse me, I said white cedar before, I meant white spruce, balsam fir, those could all be considered.
Is this the document you were looking for, Ms. Doyle?
Yes. So,
To be identified for the record, Petitioner's Cross 2.
Thank you.
so in this picture to the right, I see a dead conifer. And there's a small next to it. That I believe was from the statements, from the Act 250 closure that was planted about 5 years ago. And my question was, do you believe that tree that has been there for 5 years provides significant screening?
I believe that the conifers, that the white pines in concert, along with the ones that will be replaced, will provide screening.
So when you say concert, does that mean that you'll be adding more
Well, I said we would replace the dead trees.
dead trees? There are two on the very far right side closest to Route 100 that are dead, correct?
There's one, I know of one over there, and then there's one further along the property line. But, I mean, any of the ones that are dead will be replaced. I know of two at the moment.
Okay. Would you say that those trees that were planted have thrived since, have thrived? They just go to, sorry, let me rephrase that, that's a little choppy, sorry. Would you say that the trees that were planted in around 2014 have thrived?
I don't know when they were planted. I would say that the white pines that are planted along that berm have survived. Some are growing faster than others. Like I said, I don't know when they were planted. If there were some that were planted to replace other ones that didn't survive, I don't know that. But as you can see, the photograph, in the photograph on the right, some are taller than others.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I guess through our discussion, we've answered my other two questions having to do with the conifer trees. And, all right, so just to recap a little bit, to go back, my understanding is that the trees that have canopies taller than 15 feet will be topped at 15 feet, correct?
That are on the town's property.
That are on the town's property. So no trees that are on the Green's property will be cut, correct?
Unless the branch is hanging over onto the town's property.
So the branches on that side can be trimmed, but they can't be topped.
Correct.
And the trees that are actually on the property line, will those be topped?
I'm gonna object, we've already been through this.
Yep, I just wanted to recap and be sure. So, I had just one last question, and, it has to do with Exhibit D1S MS7. And it's the preferred siting designation under Rule 5.100.
The town's letter?
Yep.
I guess I'd like to understand what the purpose of this, it doesn't seem to bear on the question of aesthetics.
Well, this letter is, it's the letter that determined that site was acceptable, and I wanted to know if a copy of that letter was sent to the Greens and the Graces.
Again, I object on the basis that it is not relevant to aesthetics, and the record reflects that it was actually, because it's part of the record in this case. So it's been provided to the Greens and the Graces when the application for a certificate of public good was filed last December.
Okay, but not before it was, when it was initially sent. But that's fine. I think that concludes my questions. Thank you for everyone's help with putting up the documents.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Joe.
Mr. Marron,
Yes.
I'm new to this, but I'm not allowed to ask a question or comment on that, right?
Well, so I issued a memo last week asking, for cross-examination exhibits, and I guess you did not
No, I
communicate.
don't want to
with us.
cross-examine.
There were some
I don't want-
extenuating circumstances, it sounds like, with your son in the past 2 weeks that prevented you from communicating with Ms. Cadwell. That's my understanding. Do you have a few questions? I don't want to rehash the information that's already been out, but to the extent you have a few questions that cover new ground, I'll allow
Yeah.
you to ask.
It's not so much a question as a comment. I just want to clarify that letter, the information in that letter from Mr. Charlin that we got this week was new.
Yeah.
I did not, okay, because we're taxpayers in Duxbury, but we're not residents, so we weren't involved in any of the voting, is what I want to say.
I understand, but I at this point, I haven't really seen the relevancy of that letter to the question of this, what's the aesthetic impact of the project. So I'm not going to really take a lot of questions right now about that letter, unless someone can explain why that is relevant to the Queechy test. Do you have any other questions for Ms. Stathis about her testimony or evidence that we went over today?
I just wanted to know, I know that we've been talking about the Greens line, but that whole property line, the trees, what she's talking about for screening will go all the way up that line? I wasn't clear about that. Will go, because we border further up.
Would it be helpful if I pulled up the site plan so we can maybe take a look at that, and you could ask a slightly more specific question once you have that. So let me share this. All right, so this is the site plan. Do you have a question? And my understanding is your property is, if we were to look at this in the lower right-hand corner, am I correct?
Right.
Is, yes.
Where they now have all the dumping
Right.
things. I just want to make sure that any trees that were dead would be fixed there too. Or is it not going to be because it's not part of the solar project?
Do you understand the question, Ms. Daskis?
No.
I'll try to maybe help and rephrase. I think she's asking, so there's a line of conifers along the southern property line, existing conifers, and I think the record indicates that at least 2 of them have those conifers are dead, and the applicant will be replacing those. I believe what Ms. Grace is asking is, if there were any other dead conifers closer to the Grace's property, would you also replace those?
We can certainly do that. My concern is that if those conifers are in the wetland buffer outside of our limit of disturbance, we would have to get permission from the state to be able to do that.
Thank you. There's a building lot there. That's why. So we wanted to make sure we're not having a mess there either. Okay. Thank you for allowing me to get that clarified.
You're welcome. All right, Ms. Cadwell, do you have any redirect questions for your witness?
I do. I have a couple brief redirect questions. Ms. Daskis, do you recall Ms. Joyle asking you about your education?
Yes.
Can you explain what your experience is with landscape planning and landscape screening for solar projects?
Yes. So I did go to school for landscape architecture for a year and a half. I did not complete my master's program. I have been working on siting renewable energy projects, both wind energy and solar, for 25, 30 years, and have provided an analysis with respect to the Queechee analysis on numerous projects in Vermont and other states. And so I've been doing that. I'm also, I have taken ornamental horticulture classes, surveying classes, as all part of my undergraduate degree, botany classes from the University of Vermont.
Thank you. I'd like to turn to petitioners cross 2 that Ms. Joyle asked you some questions about. And Mr. Marron, are you going to put that back up? Thank you.
Okay.
Ms. Daskis, who took this picture?
I did.
And when did you take it? Do you recall?
No, hold on, I'd have to find it, to get the date off of it. I think it's September 23, but,
Was it within the last year?
oh, yes.
And does it depict, what does it depict?
So I'm standing in approximately the center or within the footprint of the solar array, and then it illustrates the buffer that the town has installed along the property line. It also includes the conifers, the white pines that the town installed. It does, as was pointed out, illustrate at least one dead white pine at the eastern side. And then the tree line between the two properties.
And where is the Greens home in relation to the image that's depicted in the exhibit?
I believe it's straight ahead.
Can you see it?
Well, no.
I'd like to offer petitioners cross 2 into the record, into evidence. Mr. Marron, are you speaking because you're on mute?
It's like we've been doing this for a decade and I'm still not good at it. Okay, apologies. Does anyone have an objection to the admission of petitioner cross 2 into the evidentiary record? Hearing no objection, the document is admitted.
Thank you. I don't have any other questions.
Do you mind if I ask one small follow-up of Ms. Daskis about this document, Ms. Cabell?
Of course not.
Yeah. Ms. Daskis, I'm looking at the right-hand side of this photo. Can you see my cursor moving around on the screen?
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm bouncing around. There's this one tree that is deceased that you've stated that will be replaced. My first question relates to the commission's rule on the installation and maintenance of aesthetic mitigation. I interpret, because you showed on your site plan that was presented in this case 2 trees that would be replaced, that those 2 trees would be subject to the commission's aesthetic mitigation installation rule, meaning that you would have a duty to say when you installed them and then report on their health for a few years afterwards.
Right.
But I take it that you're not committing to a similar level of reporting and replacement of the other existing conifers that are on this property line here.
What, meaning that if one of these trees dies in the future?
In the future, would the petitioner replace those or no, because you didn't plant them, so you're not
Right.
warranting their health.
Right. I hadn't thought about that. I knew we would be responsible for these 2 trees. And again, we want to, I'm going off, we want to work with the Greens to, provide some screening here. Our responsibility for the monitoring of those trees is for the life of the project. So we are going to be there. I guess I can commit to, if other trees die in the future, we would, we could replace those.
And we're just talking about the conifers along the southern.
Yeah, they're white pines. They're all white pines.
They're all white pines. And you would replace with like, or would you recommend a different species to replace those?
I would rather do white spruce or balsam fir. They're just more resilient.
Okay.
White pine, as we see driving around Vermont right now, are dying left and right. So I'm a little hesitant to commit to replanting white pine trees.
Okay, and then my last question relates to on the right-hand side of this picture. This, I guess starting on the left-hand side, the line of white pines is, I wouldn't characterize it as continuous, but there are several. And then towards the right-hand side, the line, it kind of peters out, and then there's a dead one, and then some space, and then another dead one. And I'm wondering about that gap. Would the petitioner
Wait.
the gap between this dead pine, the dead pine here, and the end of the existing hedgerow, I guess there isn't a similar line of white pines going in that direction.
Well, let's just before you ask the question, I just want to make sure we all understand where we are. So that dead pine, there's one more, and then you're headed towards Route 100. Okay,
Right,
so
here,
you're in the
I'll pull up
proper
the site
corner.
plan.
Yeah.
Yes. If
Okay.
I pull up the site plan, I'll
Right.
zoom in
Oh, thank you.
on it. Here are the 2 pines you've indicated that are going to be replaced.
Yep.
And it looked to me from the picture that there might be a little bit of a gap between these 2 pines that are being replaced. And
I think
I'm just wondering, is there an opportunity to just add 1 or 2 plants in there just to kind of, we don't need a continuous line necessarily, but maybe just 1 or 2? Is that a possibility?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And would the petitioner be opposed to filing an amended plan before construction showing those, small additional plants that they're putting to fill in those big spaces?
So, well, of course we'll file whatever you ask us to file. I just want to be clear what it is we're filling in. There are white pines there now. So
There are. Oh, okay.
yeah.
It didn't look that way to me into the photo, but if there are, I think that's a question going. This wasn't something that I saw until I saw the cross exhibit, to be honest. When I go back to the cross exhibit, I don't know if you can see I don't see pines here or on the other side to the right here. I see lots of pines here, but not so much here and here.
Sorry.
And so that's where I was looking at, maybe is there an area we could improve a little bit? That could be potentially an area for,
I don't want to answer a question. I don't want to answer a question.
I'm sorry, excuse me,
Leslie,
this
could
is
you-
this is the court reporter. You were running over each other, and so I didn't get the end of what Jake asked, sorry.
I apologize. I should listen more and ask fewer questions. My question is if there is a gap here, would the petitioner be willing to add, some sort of conifer or similar plant to help make that line of pines more even and less weighted to the one side?
Yeah, and I was going to ask a question. Leslie, can you show the other picture that shows the conifer? Can we show the other picture that shows the line of trees that's taken from that end? And I believe that's one of your the cross pictures. Is that,
God, this is one of the pictures that was submitted.
there, that's the spot you're talking about,
Okay. Oh, I see. So there's these little ones here
right?
that I'm missing. I see. Okay. Then perhaps I withdraw my question about the, adding in. If there is a continuous line of those conifers there, then I'm not as,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that there isn't a gap, if there was one.
May I follow up
Yes, you may.
for one more clarifying question, to your point? Ms. Daskis, you, in the post-construction site visit that you have proposed, to conduct with the Greens, to determine whether additional screening is necessary, if, that site visit takes place and the parties agree to plant additional screening in the area that the hearing officer pointed out, it's true that you'd be willing to do that, correct?
Yes,
So we could determine whether additional screening in that part is necessary after the project is constructed, and there would be an opportunity to determine if there's more screening that's needed, correct?
correct.
That's it.
Do I have the opportunity to ask a cross question after
There's
this?
a little bit of new ground covered by my question, so yes, I'll give you the opportunity to follow up.
All right. Martha, in these pictures, the vegetation in and around the conifers, would you agree that those are indigenous trees, trees that lose their leaves?
You're talking about vegetation between the white pines? Or vegetation between the white pines and the property line?
Vegetation between the white pines and behind the white pines to the property line.
And the question, there is deciduous vegetation in there, and I believe mostly deciduous.
Okay, so those trees would not be leafed in the spring, fall, and winter months.
Correct, they have stems are still there.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, any response to that, Ms. Cadwell, or we're all done? Okay, then.
Nope, we're
thank you,
done.
Ms. Daskis.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Daskis. You are excused.
Thank you.
Ms. Joyal, you're going to go next, but before we begin cross-examination for you, I just want to ask him, is now a good time to take a break?
If it's good with everyone else, I'm fine. I don't need a break right now, but
Just let me know if
Thank
you,
you.
Ms. Cadwell, do you anticipate needing the entirety of the 40 minutes you asked for?
I hope not.
Okay.
I really just anticipated that there may be, technical issues and, making sure that there's good communication. So no, I don't think so.
Okay, then I think we'll plow ahead and try to wrap this up before we take a break.
May I just offer, because Ms. Joyal she was on, if she needs a break, I'm not opposed to allowing her to, take a deep breath before cross-examination. So I don't want to do your job, but I recognize that.
Thank you for thinking of folks. Ms. Joy, are you ready to begin cross-examination, or would you like to take a 5-minute breather?
We might as well just get on with this and finish up.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
great.
So, Ms. Joy, I'm gonna swear you in, and then we're gonna talk about the exhibits you've offered that haven't been admitted yet, and then we're going to, we'll start the cross-examination. Could you raise your right hand, please? Do you swear or affirm under penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. So I just want to make sure that I understand the situation with these objections, Attorney Cadwell. Ms. Joyle has pre-filed testimony and also several exhibits. You've objected to portions of her pre-filed testimony and portions of exhibits 5 and 3.
Leslie, you're muted.
Sorry about that. Yeah, I have to, sorry. Just want to confirm my, I'm sorry, Mr. Marron, could you restate the question? I was trying to find my, the objection filing.
Yeah, I just wanted to confirm. So you're objecting to portions of Ms. Joyle's pre-filed testimony and portions of exhibits 3 and 5.
3 and 5. Oh, shoot, hang on.
I will stop sharing my screen too.
Portions. Okay, so I think there was a numbering issue. Where's that? Correct.
Okay.
The front page of the pre-filed testimony labeled 3 as 2 and 2 as 3. So I just, so yes, you are correct.
Okay.
Portions of 3 and 5.
And just to clarify for the record where we are with these documents is that I'm going to defer a ruling on this motion until I issue my P for D. But I do want to reiterate that the hearing officer in this case did grant a hearing solely on the topic of aesthetics. And so I again would advise the parties that we should keep the questioning related to these, assuming these documents are admitted either in whole or in part, we should be focused on aesthetics issues and not on other topics that might be addressed in those documents. So with that out of the way, I think I will say the witness is available for cross-examination and we can get started.
Thank you. Ms. Joel, you do not currently reside with your parents in Duxbury, correct?
I object. Why is that relevant?
The relevance, Mr. Marron, is Ms. Joyle is testifying about facts and circumstances related to the view from her parents' home, and whether she lives there or not is entirely relevant to the foundation for her testimony, her entire testimony.
Okay, I'll allow the question.
I lived at this property address from the time I was 6 years old until I was 22. I lived in Vermont until 7 years ago. Visited my parents, helped them with whatever they needed on at least a weekly basis, if not more often. Currently, I live in Maine, 3 hours from here.
And it's true, based on I think what you just said, that you did not live with your parents at the time you prepared your pre-filed testimony.
I did not live with them, but I came here and we worked on the pre-filing together.
I have some questions about the testimony. If you'd like to, if you could, the hearing officer could bring up her pre-filed.
Bear with me one moment.
Thank you. I'm turning to question in A2 on page 1.
Sorry, question 2?
Correct.
Okay.
And you see where it says, the question says, what is the purpose of your testimony? You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and do you see that
I'm
the
sorry,
answer?
I'm sorry, excuse me. Instead of, you have to give me a verbal answer, please.
Okay. Sorry. Yes.
Thank you.
And you see in your answer, your testimony uses our and not my, correct?
Yes.
So here you are speaking for your parents, correct? Not for yourself.
Yes.
So is it fair to say that each time in your pre-file testimony where you say our or ours, we or us, you're speaking for your parents and not yourself?
Yes.
And isn't it true that the facts and opinions you present on behalf of your parents aren't based on your own personal experience, but the personal experience and knowledge of your parents?
Yes.
And Ms. Joyle, isn't it true that the Queechy test does not require a solar array to be invisible from adjacent properties?
I don't feel that I can answer that question reasonably.
Okay. Isn't it true that the Queechy test is satisfied if the solar array's visibility from your parents' property is broken up by vegetation?
Again, I can't give you an affirmative answer.
And isn't it true that you did not consult a landscape architect or a company to help you evaluate the reasonableness of petitioner's aesthetic mitigation measures for the project?
Can you explain that question to me better, please?
Why don't I rephrase it for you? Isn't it true that you consulted an arborist about additional screening for the from your parents' property for the project?
Yes, my parents were looking into other alternatives to have an idea of the expense they would have to incur to not have negative visual impacts to from their property.
And isn't an arborist a kind of tree doctor and not an expert in aesthetic impact of solar projects?
I can't answer that question.
And isn't it true that deer feed on arborvitaes, especially in winter months when greenery is harder to find?
I am not an expert in that situation. I can't answer that question.
Okay. And isn't it true that arborvitaes require ideal conditions to thrive?
Again, I am not an arborist. I can't answer that question.
So you couldn't answer any questions about whether the proposal from your arborist is reasonable to ensure that the plants will survive during the life of the project?
My parents, with my assistance, reached out to an arborist, and being that that's what they do on a day-to-day basis, they leaned on their expertise to suggest what would be reasonable to be placed there as screening.
But you've not offered an arborist as a witness in this case, correct?
Correct.
So I don't have the opportunity to ask an arborist about whether these species of trees would survive for the life of the project, correct?
Correct.
So we don't have any basis the hearing officer wouldn't have any basis to find that the arborvitaes that you've proposed are a reasonable solution to the problem that your parents perceive they have with the solar array, correct?
I'm sorry, you broke up in the middle of that. Can you repeat that?
Happy to. So there's no basis for the hearing officer to make findings that the species of plants that you're providing in your testimony would survive for the life of the project, correct?
I can't answer that.
And isn't it true that you and your parents have not proposed an alternative location on the parcel for the solar array?
We have not.
And isn't it true that your aunt and uncle, Robert and Catherine Grace, have not proposed an alternative location on the parcel for the solar array?
I don't know. I can't speak to that.
Have you, let me strike that. I'm turning to page 4 of your pre-file testimony. And I thank the hearing officer for his assistance on this. Specifically lines 8 to 9. You see where it says we had a site visit on the property?
Yes,
Isn't it true that your parents did not attend that site visit?
that is true. They asked me to go to that site visit as my mom's mobility is challenged. She had a hip surgery years ago and she cannot walk on rough ground. And my dad is hard of hearing.
So turning back to my question earlier about where in your testimony it says we, this is the instance where we doesn't mean your parents, but it means you and others.
Apparently.
Well, is it a parent or yes?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Doyle, did you receive a copy of comments that the town of Duxbury filed in this matter on June 25th?
I'm not sure.
I guess
Do
I
you
would
have a
ask.
copy of that?
Yes, thank you. If the hearing officer would bring up petitioner's cross 4. This is the document that I was referring to, Ms. Doyle.
Is this the document that was just added?
This was the document that I emailed to you after it was filed by the town.
Okay,
Have you seen
All
this
right.
before?
yes,
And did you review it when, have you reviewed it before today's hearing?
yes,
And isn't it true that the town of Duxbury uses the project parcel to stage its road maintenance operations?
all of its road maintenance operations? No,
Well, isn't it true that the town of Duxbury uses the project parcel to stage some of its road maintenance operations?
it appears that way, yes,
And isn't it true that those road maintenance operations include stockpiling a variety of road maintenance materials like sand, gravel, crushed stone, jersey barriers, and culverts?
Yes,
And isn't it true that a portion of the project parcel is used to store approximately 4,000 cubic yards of sand for winter road maintenance?
I don't know how much is stockpiled there. It appears there's sand stockpiled.
It's a significant amount of sand, wouldn't you agree?
I haven't been over there to see that sand. You can just see a little bit of it through the trees.
And through the tree, which trees are you referring to, Ms. Joyle?
From my parents' house in the fall or winter, you can see some stockpiles.
And isn't it true that the town of Duxbury will be adding a new salt shed to the project parcel to protect the town's road salt inventory from the weather?
The letter said they were hoping to do that, isn't it? Isn't that what it said?
And isn't it true that the town of Duxbury selected the proposed location for the array so that it would not interfere with the town's road maintenance operations on the site?
That's what they stated in their letter.
Do you have any basis to believe that their claims are incorrect?
I can't answer that question.
But what evidence, if any, do you have that the town of Duxbury did not select, that selected the proposal? Let me rephrase that. What, if anything, do you have to offer to contest that the town selected the proposed location so it wouldn't interfere with the road maintenance operations that they used the site for?
Other than my mom telling me that the town voted to not build a salt shed there, the only evidence there is this letter they presented.
And isn't it true that if the road maintenance material stockpiles were located closer to your parents' property, there would be dust and noise that will not occur from the solar array?
One could assume that, yes.
Now, turning back to, I apologize to the hearing officer. Well, I apologize. I have not. Yeah. I'd like to look back at Ms. Joyle's pre-filed testimony. And now I'm going to page 4, Q&A 5. And directing your attention, Ms. Joyle, to line 4, where it says the solar array is 35 feet from the property, or must be within 35 feet of the property. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't it true
Sorry,
that
what was the answer? I'm sorry, what was the answer?
Sorry, yes.
Thank you.
Isn't it true that the solar array is set back 55 feet from the property line?
I'm going to refer to the map, sorry. It does say 55 feet on the site map. However, when our document was created, the map that we had showed a less distance, showed the 35 feet.
And when did you prepare your pre-filed testimony, Ms. Joyle?
Prior to May 24th.
Was it after, so it was after December when the CPG application was filed, correct?
Yes.
I just need a minute. I may be done.
Leslie, I don't know if you're talking to us or someone else. but
No,
you're
I'm
muted.
I was talking to y'all.
Okay. You were muted, sorry.
Sometimes it's a good thing when I'm muted. So turning back to, I'd like to, if we could pull up the picture from the Greens living room and the Greens kitchen that was reviewed earlier with Ms. Staskis. I think it's part of BRG 5. Those were a portion of the exhibit that I did not object to. And let me say, I really appreciate, while the hearing officer may have trouble with the mute button like me, you do a really good job at being able to pull up exhibits, and it's been very helpful. Thank you. Okay, let's start with this picture. What focal length did you use to take this picture?
Focal length, sorry, I don't understand what you're asking me. Did I enlarge, did I zoom it in? Is that what you're asking?
I guess I'm asking what the focal length was of the camera that you used.
I used the camera on my iPhone.
And do you know what the iPhone focal length is?
I do not.
So I just want to clarify, you don't know what focal length or what focal length has in terms of how an image is presented, and whether it accurately depicts what the field of view of a human eye.
Correct.
Okay. Can you point to the view of the Hunger Mountain from this picture?
It's in the center of the picture, the mountain range that goes to the right side of the picture.
And on the next picture, Mr. Marron. Is the Hunger Mountain Range visible in this picture?
Well, it would be more visible if the screen wasn't obscured in the picture. But through the naked eye, yes, it's the same view. It's from the center to the right.
And wouldn't you agree that it's the Hunger Mountain Range is situated above where the solar array will be located?
Yes.
Thank you. I think I may be finished. I have nothing else. Thank you very much.
Okay, so normally at this point, after a party has finished cross-examining a witness, Ms. Joyle, if you were represented by counsel, they would have an opportunity to ask what are known as redirect questions, which is where, say the opposing counsel had asked you a question that was like, asked for a very specific answer, and you felt like more context was necessary. This was maybe where that information could come out. So I'm going to give you just a limited opportunity here. If there's any question that you were asked that you feel like you need to give a little bit more of an answer to, or you want to clarify your answer, you can do so now. Otherwise, you're all done. Oh dear, I see frozen
Sorry.
screens. Hopefully the internet connectivity improves.
No, I think that I'm fine. Thank you.
You're fine. Okay, thank you. Ms. Cadwell, are you still with us? Your picture is frozen.
Me?
I am, no,
Oh.
I guess I am. I
Okay.
am still here, and I
You're
apologize.
still here. Okay, I'm just making sure that everyone is still participating, because what I'm seeing on my screen gave me a little bit of a worry that some folks had lost connectivity.
Mr. Marron, I have a question.
Yes, Ms.
And
Grayson.
it's more a point of, before we got the letter from Duxbury, I didn't realize they were talking about making a bigger shed. That's not applicable to this permit, right? They would have to get another permit?
I don't know. I work for the Public Utility Commission. We authorize the construction of electric generation facilities. We don't authorize the construction of municipal salt sheds or anything like that. I don't know if it's Act 250 or some other jurisdiction that has a responsibility for that, but it's not.
So, Ms. Caldwell, is like the acreage that you guys are dealing with is not anything that includes what Duxbury's withholding, right? So it's, I guess I'm wondering if we will have input into, because that's obviously closer to our property. Or is this the place where I should have made input?
My name is Cadwell, and
Sorry.
I can't answer your question. I'm only here representing Duxbury on an electric generation project. If you have questions about, for the town, you should direct them to the town. I understand that they have, they publicly noticed their meetings. I understand that you are familiar with how municipal governments work and your opportunity to provide comments in zoning matters and planning matters and that kind of thing. So I guess I would defer to your own experience on that and direct your attention directly to the town.
Okay, I think what's made it difficult is we are taxpayers but not residents, so we don't get all the notices. So that's the problem.
Well, they are posted publicly on the Duxbury Town's website. Anybody can get them. So I encourage you to utilize those resources. They're really helpful.
Thank you.
All right, well, that concludes the evidentiary portion of the hearing today, I believe. Unless the department, do you have anything else? I'm sorry, I haven't been actually asking if you had any questions, but I assumed not. And I assume you would have piped up if you did, but I just want to check here at the end. Is there anything on the department's behalf that needs to happen?
No, but thank you for asking, and I appreciate it.
Okay, great. So the last thing that I'd like to discuss today then is the schedule for briefing. So for the benefit of the Joyals, for Ms. Joyal and the Graces, after the evidentiary hearing, customarily, the parties are given an opportunity to file final briefs, which is where you can explain your position and cite the evidence that has been admitted to the record, and make your case one more time. So assuming you'd like to make those filings, we should discuss the timing for those filings, and then usually the parties are given an opportunity sometimes to reply to those filings. So I'll turn to Attorney Cadwell first. Did you have a particular schedule in mind in terms of briefing?
Yeah, so the parties had already submitted in their proposed schedule, a briefing schedule, and I'm happy to discuss today.
Thank you for reminding me of it. Yes, please.
That's good. So briefs were due 2 weeks after the transcript is ready, and then reply briefs due 1 week after. And I guess I would also encourage the parties to go to the Public Utility Commission's website and click on the public participation tab. There's really helpful information on what these things are and how to put them together and what the rules are to do briefs that are compliant with the rule. And I want to just be clear that there is, in addition to what the hearing officer said, resources available to help you put those materials together.
And then, at probably great risk to myself, I'm going to offer a few musings about things that could be addressed in the briefs. These musings are not ruling. Obviously, I'm going to wait till I read all of the final filings and look over the entire record before I render a proposal for decision. But it sounds like there were discussions between the Greens and the petitioner about potential screening that could occur. The commission is always open to hearing mutually agreed upon reasonable resolutions of disputes. And if the parties were able to get together and work out a agreed upon planting plan, or whatever it is for that southern border, I think that could be helpful. It's not necessary. If the parties just want to brief their positions and let the commission make a decision, that's also an acceptable way to resolve this case. But I would just always encourage the parties to also not give up on trying to work together and come up with a mutually acceptable solution. With that, is there anything else that folks would like to discuss today before we adjourn?
Only just one last clarifying question about the evidence for which there were filed objections. I know, and I'd offered to have you address that in the proposal for decision. But I wonder if it would be, I actually don't wonder, I know it would be more helpful to the parties to have a ruling on those objections in advance of briefing, so that we don't waste our time proposing findings or having to make more arguments about the admissibility or not of it. I just asked the hearing officer to take that, to consider that. We'll happily work with however you all want to do it, but typically the objections are ruled on either at a hearing or before the hearing, and this is kind of unusual. So,
well, I'll disagree a little bit on that. I mean, I've seen plenty of hearing officers defer evidentiary rulings until they issue their P4D. But if you would like, I can get a ruling out. But we would probably need to push back the briefing schedule a week then, so that give me 2 weeks to get a ruling out, and then you can have your time to do your briefing. Would that work for you?
I don't want to delay. If it's your preference, if it's the hearing officer's preference to just do it all in the P4D, I was just hoping that maybe it would be a little easier, but it's fine. I think anyway, that's fine.
Okay. And it sounds like we'll stick with the briefing schedule. The initial briefs are due in 2 weeks, and the reply briefs are due 1 week after that.
Well, 2 weeks from when the transcript is ready.
From when the transcript is ready. So yes, that will be filed in EPUC. So all the parties will get a notification when that happens.
Right. Can I ask a question?
Yes, of course.
About how much time will it take for the for the oh, sorry, I totally lost what it's called. Transcript will be ready.
The transcript will be in by the end of next week.
next week? This,
Yes. Next week. A week
Next
from
week.
tomorrow. Yeah.
okay, thank you.
And just as a matter of practice, a little helpful hint for folks, you can start writing your brief before the transcript. What the transcript does is help you provide, gives you citations to evidence that was adduced today. So I know I'll be starting to draft, and I just encourage other folks, take the opportunity while Kim is working on the transcript to begin that process, and then you can fill in the gaps once the transcript is in. Just a pointer.
All right.
I just want to say one thing because Leslie brought up the knowledge I might have about zoning. We have reached out to Duxbury several times, and I think what's problematic is they don't have a town manager. It's a citizen-run select board, and not once have they responded to anything. So I think that's made this whole issue more difficult and more negative than it needed to be. And I think that, I don't know how, I think that may have happened with my sister Becky too, but it's just made it more difficult. And like I said, I didn't even know about this garage till 2 days ago. So, thank you.
All right. All right. It sounds like we're finished. So we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone, very much, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Moore.
Thank you.